Check. 1, 2.
The
Brief.
This is the Debrief.
Go. Your guide to Detroit.
Your guide to Detroit's
arts and entertainment scene.
This is the
Brief.
Hello and welcome to the Debrief for Tuesday, February 12th, 2019. This is your podcast for Detroit concerts, comedy, plays, food, drink, and more. I'm your co-host. My name is Seth Ressler.
And I'm Becky Scarcello.
So the way it works, if you've never listened to the podcast before, I am the guy who is, relatively speaking, new to Detroit.
And I am the exact opposite. I've been here my whole life.
Yeah, you're the veteran. You've done several tours of duty here.
Lots.
So, look, here's what's happening on today's show. We have Ann DeLisi, one of our favorites. She, every so often, calls into the show, tells us what's going on. We figured it would be a good time to have her on because the Grammys just happened, so we'll get her take on that. And she's celebrating a big anniversary this year. It's been 10 years that she's been doing the Essential Music Show on WDET, so we'll talk to her about that.
We're going to give you some last-minute options for things to do on Valentine's Day.
And the Detroit History Podcast, one of my favorites. This is produced by friend of the show, Tim Kiska, who is a professor of journalism over at U of M. He's bringing it back for season number 2. We will talk a little bit about what's in store for that.
And on our Friday show, an in-depth interview with former WDIV news anchor for 38 years, Carmen Harlan. She's going to talk about her new clothing line.
Yeah, we normally release that episode on Thursday, but this week we're moving it to Friday. We're going to play with it.
We'll just try something new.
Let
us know what you think.
Yeah, you can always drop us a line. By the way, if you want more information about any of the things that we talk about, the best way to find them is to go over to our website, thedebriefdetroit.com, because we talk about a lot of stuff. I mean, we really do.
And even stuff that doesn't make it in the show, we have written interviews on there too.
Yeah,
all kinds of stuff.
If you want links to everything that we talk about on the show, all you have to do is sign up for our email list right there at the website, and we will send you an email with links to everything that we talk about in these episodes.
You can also just text the word Detroit to 444-999 to sign up.
All right, we're going to get the show started and meet our guest host in just a moment. Stick around.
The Debrief.
All right, before we do that, we do have an announcement to make. We've been making this for a couple of weeks now. We are now over 100 episodes into this podcast.
We're starting to figure out what we're doing.
Almost. We've almost got it under control.
We're getting close. Yeah.
Close.
But think how much better we've gotten since the beginning.
Oh, absolutely.
Exciting.
And I love the podcasting space. I mean, I've been involved with it for 8 years. I go around the country and talk to other folks about doing podcasts. And what's the question we've heard over and over and over again in the time that we've been doing this?
I want to start my own podcast. How can I do that?
Right. Every guest that's come on the show has said they've also, we've been thinking about doing a podcast. You should.
Yeah. I'm not sure how to start though.
Yeah. So that's what we have been hearing over and over. So we have decided that we are launching Michigan Podcast Productions. And the whole idea behind it is we are helping Detroit arts and entertainment organizations launch their own podcasts.
And why are we doing that?
Because it's fun and you should do it.
Yes. And it's uniquely well suited to arts and entertainment organizations.
I think this is true. I think here's the thing. If you are an organization that has fans that are passionate, but maybe you only come into contact with them here and there, meaning that you're a museum or a restaurant or a comedy club or a band that people may come out and see you every few weeks or every few months, and you want to stay in contact between those times that people come see you. A podcast is actually a great way to do that.
It's also a great way to tell the stories behind the scenes.
Yeah, so if you've got a new exhibit opening up, if you're a theater and you've got a new season opening up and you kind of want to give some of the behind the scenes details.
Teasers. Yeah.
It's a great way to do that. So if that's something you've been thinking about for a while now and you're getting ready to pull the trigger, here's what I recommend. Go over to our brand new website, MichiganPodcastProductions.com. Read up a little bit more about it. Again, it's MichiganPodcastProductions.com. Check it out. And, if you want us to help, all you have to do is contact us. Reach out to us by email.
This is the Debrief.
All right, Becky, let's meet our guest host for today's episode. This is a guy who is behind a website, been around for a number of years now, NickDrinks.com. He just produced the Golden Jigger Awards, which is Detroit's first Beverage Awards show. Happened back in December. He is also the Detroit Beverage Director for Thrillist. You can find his work on the Travel Channel, Our Detroit, the Food Network, Tales of the Cocktail, the big event that they do for the beverage industry down in New Orleans every year, and the Herd podcast, which is a great podcast. If you are into cocktails, you should go check out what these guys are doing. Please welcome to the show, Nick Britsky.
Hello.
How are you?
That's great. I appreciate that intro. That's wonderful.
It's long. And
I know. And
by
there's
the way,
more.
yeah, we had to cut out half the credits. We're like, we're going to be here reading credits all day, but you're doing a lot of work.
Yeah.
You're a dapper gentleman around town.
Well, thank you.
Or a lot of drinking.
A lot of drinking, yes. In fact, someone commented on YouTube that you are saving my liver by showing us what the good things are. And I'm like, I appreciate that. I'm sacrificing for you.
Oh, very nice.
Well, speaking of good things, it looks like you brought some with you.
Of course.
What do you got in that bag there?
Yeah,
So,
bag of tricks.
yeah, a great way to take cocktails around is to bottle them. And you can get these are 187 milliliters, I believe. So it's about 2 cocktails. And we're going to open this up really quick. Ooh, not bad. And what I have in here is a Hemingway soda. So this is rum. This is... what else? Maraschino liqueur, some lime juice, and then instead of grapefruit juice, which would normally be in a Hemingway, we did grapefruit soda from Q Tonics.
And you did this yourself?
I mean, I just poured a bunch of stuff in a glass and dumped it in the
Wow.
bottle. Yeah,
That's called mixology.
I know. Look at
Fancy
that.
town.
It's it's like a light peachish.
Yes, it's
Liquid.
beautiful. Yeah.
and that color really comes from a little bit of the rum so I used a dark aged rum from Plantation, and then the Q grapefruit does have a little bit of grapefruit color to it, but not a ton.
All right,
Little early sunset color.
let's take a sip, shall we?
Yeah.
Ooh,
That's nice.
That is really nice.
That is really nice.
And you know what's great about it? It makes me feel like it's not stormy and snowy and yucky outside.
yeah, it's like summer in my mouth.
Yeah, or spring at least. Yeah.
you're
I don't
hanging
know
out with
spring.
Hemingway.
Delicious.
Well, let's talk about your website here, nickdrinks.com. What is this all about?
So this started when I really wanted to kind of track how cocktails were doing in Metro Detroit. So right around the time that I give a lot of credit to Roast, Michael Simon, because he was the guy that, there were great restaurants that were happening in Detroit, but he was the one that came in and did something kind of new and gave this new energy to have, great new cuisine, as well as a great cocktail program. And shortly after that, we got Sugar House, we got the Oakland, we got Standby, and it really just became this like tsunami effect where now if you open a restaurant without craft cocktails, you're doing it wrong.
Correct.
So put that into a timeline for me, because I've only been here
You
about
weren't
3
here.
years now. How long have craft cocktails really been in Detroit?
7 years?
Yeah.
Right around there?
7-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like before that, it just generally was not a thing. And I remember going on trips to Chicago or New York or something and being kind of blown away like, oh, this is what liquor can taste like.
Which is such a bummer because we have such this heritage of cocktails in Detroit.
Yeah. So many invented here, right?
Right, like the last word. The last word was invented at the Detroit Athletic Club, and it actually got forgotten about.
What is the last word?
The last word is chartreuse, green chartreuse. It is maraschino liqueur, also in this cocktail, lime juice, and gin. And I believe it's all even parts, too. So this got forgotten about, and it got picked up by some guys in San Francisco. So our drink got picked up by the West Coast, and then we're like, no, it's ours. We own it. So the DAC actually opened up a bar 3-4 years ago called The Last Word to kind of reclaim that. But, it's private, so it's kind of hard to get in the DAC. So
Right.
Nice. So how much of the website is focusing on like history, like we're talking about, or are you more focused on what's going on in the scene now?
There's not a lot of organization. You make it seem very professional. It's really kind of what's coming to my mind at the time. I've done a big push kind of on video because I feel like video gets great engagement. My Instagram channel had gotten some good love too, so I do a lot of great photos. But when I do have the time to sit down and really analyze things, the biggest post I did actually in January was all the holidays that are tied to alcohol. And there's actually 137 of them that I found.
Whoa.
So you could set up reminders. And if you want to know, like, hey, when's Bloody Mary Day? When is Martini Day? When is this day? There's that list. And it's the most comprehensive I found on the web.
Wow.
Yeah. And who decides all those? Like that's
Funny story.
Yeah.
So we brought that up. So we had a TV show that we did last year, and we brought up who makes up these holidays. And just some guy decides it. So we invented International Canned Cocktail Day. So it's in September. Oh gosh, I already forgot the date, but I set up a website for it. It's like cannedcocktailtay.com, and we're going to celebrate great canned cocktails. And we were on the news and we talked about it, and it was a lot of fun.
Wait, they're great
Oh.
canned cocktails?
Oh,
Is that what I think it
yes.
is? Meaning
Yeah,
it's
it
literally...
comes in a can.
Oh, yes. And in fact, the one that I just did a video recently about is Rock and Rye. And Rock and Rye is a combo of rock sugar, rye whiskey, some flavoring, some orange, some bitters. And that little thing packs a punch because it's actually 42% in the can. Teeny, tiny can.
42%.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that Rock and Rye was a thing besides a Faygo flavor. I mean...
Oh, yeah, because
Yep.
the rye whiskey.
It was I mean, I guess that makes sense.
It's
but I didn't,
older than Prohibition, actually.
Really?
So you had crummy rye whiskey. You jazzed it up with
Right.
flavoring and sugar and things.
Yeah.
Let's talk about these awards that you did back in December, the Golden Jigger Awards.
Yeah.
I know this is the first one. Tell us about the concept.
So the thinking is a lot of publications would do these award shows, but it would either be based on a public vote, which I love the public, but not all of them could get to all those places, or it would be just the writers. And that's great too. They have some great reference. But my thought is, what if I could combine the public, the writers, the industry, and myself, because I have an ego, and those things all kind of blended together gave me the awards. So we had 15 different categories that we found. There were 32 different people that represented key industry places as well as key media. So like Mark Karolanchik was part of it. And those people all voted on it. We did a public vote. And that gave us a really great representation of who the best of the best is. So every time these awards got announced, the whole audience blew, exploded with applause. And I'm like, yes, we did it. We actually picked the right awards. Northern Aquavit was a great example for that. Robin Cleveland won. He started this little aquavit company in Detroit. It beat out all the other brands. He got up there, gave this passionate speech. He's like near tears. Everyone's cheering and clapping. I'm like, this is Detroit. Detroit has this great energy. He could start an aquavit brand from zero and get everyone in this room, all the bartenders excited about it. Oh, it's like the energy was amazing.
So I don't know if everybody out there always realizes that there is such a level of art to bartending. I mean, yes, there are places where it's, okay, pull the draft handle, open the can of beer, but there are places where it's, and is mixology the word that everybody in the industry uses, or is it something else?
It depends on the flavor of the week. Some people think mixology is too highfalutin,
Right.
so they say, I'm just a bartender.
Yeah.
What people want to drink, I make. If you want something fancy, I'll do it. If you want me to crack open a Miller High Life, that's what I'll do. So when you look at the complexity, if you are a beer guy, you have to know all these great spirits or all the great beers, but you don't mix them. So you don't have to know how the flavors blend together. Same with sommelier. You don't really blend wines together there. But with a mixologist, not only do you have to know all these different flavors of all these different brands, that the spectrum is way bigger than beer and wine, then you got to know how they play together. So there is such a high level of skill to be a really good mixologist because just of all that knowledge you got to store in your head.
Where do you learn a craft like that? Is that something you go to school for? Or do you just go apprentice with somebody? Like, what are the resources?
It's hard to really learn that in a school. There are a couple bartending schools, but really it's a lot more of the day-to-day, the business stuff. It's hands-on. You start being a bar back, you learn all the brands, you learn how all the different glassware, then you become a server or you become like an assistant bartender, and you kind of work your way up. It's going to take you probably 3 to 5 years to get started in that stuff. I mean, there are thousands of books, there are tens of thousands of brands. All that knowledge to kind of cram in your head takes time.
Oh,
I
cool.
would think, too, just certain people have more of a knack for it, just better taste buds or, try lots of different things or a more wide palette of things. So,
And there is something called a super taster, too. So you can get
Yeah.
actually taste strips that I have a pack at my house, and you can test how many taste buds you have on your tongue to see if you are a super taster.
oh, yeah.
And it's actually a little bit of a curse because if you are a super taster, the certain flavors don't appeal to you, and it's harder to then, kind of make a balanced drink for the public.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say I am not a super
I am
taster.
not.
Oh, I think I might be.
Really? Yeah, you might.
Should've
I
brought the
should.
strips.
I should find out. Yeah, I've noticed too a difference in connecting craft cocktails with food that I never saw before. Now, you always think about beer and wine pairings with food, but I've heard a lot more people recently talk about how cocktails pair with food, or their pop-up dinners where it's paired with something. And I think that's pretty new here in Detroit. It's probably been going on elsewhere. But
Well, yeah, and there's a whole section of the Cicerone, the beer server test, where you have to learn about pairing. Obviously, sommelier, there's a huge pairing. But with cocktails, you really can't. It's the only beverage where you can change it.
Right.
If you think this flavor doesn't work, add something else to it.
right, it's cool.
All right, Nick. Well, we're excited that you're here. Hang out for the show. We're glad that you could join us, and we'll just have a good time.
Thank you.
This is the Debrief,
Want more?
your guide to Detroit's arts and entertainment scene.
Go to the debriefdetroit.com.
Becky, what's happening in music news?
So I want to tell you about a record release coming out of Motown. Marvin Gaye has a lost recording out there. It's called You're the Man. This album was recorded in 1972. Never been released.
What happened to it?
Not exactly sure. It's a bit of a mystery. But to commemorate what would have been his 80th birthday this year, it's going to be released on March 29th. It's 2 LPs. It was originally intended to be the follow-up to his What's Going On album. But it's coming out now, March 29th. There's 17 tracks on it. So 15 of which are being released for the very first time. A couple of the songs have been on other collaborations, but nothing like this. So this is going to be a very anticipated release. Yeah. And it kind of goes along, too, with Motown's 60th anniversary. So
I heard that Tupac has a verse on this. Is that true?
You'll have to wait and see. Yeah. So many mysterious things about it. So... Hey, I was thinking about, guys, whatever field you're in, you need role models, right? Like Nick, who was like your mentors, or, when you decide, I'm going to really go all in on this cocktail thing.
Yeah, you're an entrepreneur. Who are the guys you look up to?
Yeah, I was looking at Gary Vaynerchuk because he actually did a wine podcast and kind of focused on wine and how people can get better with that. And then he used that as a springboard into more generic entrepreneurial stuff. And he's gotten huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, you hear about
really
him.
has, yeah.
And Seth, like for you in radio, probably there was people kind of... so you could see yourself doing it.
Yeah, I mean, the guy who... I don't know that I was a fan personally so much as I admired him from a business sense. Is Howard Stern was the biggest thing in the radio industry when I was coming up.
When you were coming up.
Especially coming up through rock radio. So, that was a guy that you sort of watched. And I remember I read the book, Private Parts. I went and saw the movie, and then burned all my copies when he divorced his wife anyway.
Oh, yeah, right. But I think the point is, it's important to have people in whatever industry you're in to kind of like pave the way a little bit. So this is something really cool that the Motown Museum is doing. It's their second year, and it's really all about honoring that entrepreneurial spirit of the Gordy family. So we're not talking just Barry, who famously started the Motown label with $800 loan from his family fund. But every one of those kids started some sort of business, a hair salon or whatever it might be. So they started this Black Legacy program. So what it is it's a forum, a panel of speakers that's open to the public. It's taking place Wednesday, February 20th in the evening, and specifically timed for Black History Month. So it's going to be Detroit business owners discussing the importance of Black businesses in the city. They're going to talk about challenges they've faced, successes they had, keys to doing what they're doing. And there'll also be a panel member from the Small Business Program at Wayne State. There'll be the director of Techtown will be there. So it's all about discussing business advice for entrepreneurs, budding entrepreneurs with Black businesses.
This is really important. I mean, I've been podcasting for 8 years now, and I actually remember having the moment because for the first I think a year or two that I was doing it, it's very easy to feel like you're sitting alone in a room talking to other people. And I'll never forget when I found online the other community of all the hundreds and thousands of other podcasters out there that all of a sudden you're like, there's other people that I can discuss the issues that I'm facing, and they're facing the same challenges.
Right, and not reinvent the wheel for everything you're doing.
The other thing is Techtown has some great resources. So if you are entrepreneurial, go check out some of the classes, go check out some of the lectures. I mean, that is such a cool space.
Yeah, and not everybody knows about it. So yeah, this is, like I said, Wednesday, February 20th. It's not at the museum. That's important to note. It's at 12C, which is in the New Center area, 461 Burroughs Street. So look that up if you're interested. It's all free, open to the public. So I have a long concert list because Valentine's Day is coming up, and a lot of people like to go see music. So
yay!
Fire up for love.
Yay, love.
So listen to this variety on Valentine's Day. Okay, so this is Thursday, guys, February 14th. There's the R&B Rewind at the Masonic Temple. This is Guy and BBD, Genuine, bunch of others.
Belle Biv DeVoe?
Yeah.
BBD, I Thought It Was Me?
Exactly.
That's my jam.
I know,
Their
right?
music is mentally
Now
hip-hop,
you
smoothed
know.
out on the R&B tip with a pop feel appeal to it.
There you go.
I wrote that on a volleyball when I
Tip of
was
the tongue.
On a volleyball.
high school.
Sweet. You can also go see the Whispers with the special guest Howard Hewitt. They're at Soundboard at Motor City Casino. Tony Braxton, Smooth Jams at the Fox. Ben Sharkey, amazing crooner from Detroit at the Willis Show Bar. And if you want to wait to celebrate, on Saturday, February 16th, you can see Van Halenstein's Day.
Wait. Wait, what?
Yeah. Or maybe it's Van Halentine's Day, but you get my point. The Van Halen of Valentine's Day.
Right.
At the Magic Bag there in Ferndale. That's an annual event, by
Is
the
that
way.
for unlawful carnal knowledge?
Could be.
That was so clever when I was
You're
like 12.
So, I think you are still 12 in a lot of ways. So Friday, February 15th, Anderson .Paak and the Free Nationals at the Fillmore. I'm taking my son to this one. I'm super excited. And Anderson just won a Grammy for Best Rap Performance last night. He tied with Kendrick Lamar. There's almost never ties in Grammys, but...
You can tie?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I didn't
Yeah.
either.
Yeah, so...
What do you have to do? Is that like you arm wrestle for
Or
it?
do you split the award? Like, is
Yeah.
it like custody?
Yeah, they'll probably cut it off. Yeah, I don't know.
That would suck to have half a Grammy on your show.
Did they make two real quick?
The bottom and the top, you know?
Yeah, right. Do you want the part with the name on it or the record thing? So DIA does these cool Friday night lives, right? So I went last Friday. There was a silent disco sort of thing with this really cool DJ explaining how kind of all the roots of soul music and a lot of Motown stuff. So this Friday night, somebody you've seen and liked, Alvin Waddles.
Yeah, I saw him with the Handel's Messiah that they do.
Amazing musician, right?
Yeah.
So he's going to be with Marion Hayden, and they're going to perform the live score for the Flying Ace.
Neat.
Yeah, so that's the story of the African-American fighter pilot who was a hero returning home after World War I. So I think that would be really special. And that's all free and in the Rivera Court, which is an amazing place to hear music. Friday, February 15th, Insane Clown Posse. I haven't heard them in a while. So Fearless Fred Fury is their new album. There's an album listening party at the Crowfoot. And every ticket, it's only $10, and you get the album.
Michigan represent right there.
I know.
Have you ever been to an album listening party?
I don't...
They're unusual.
think so.
I went to a Radiohead one like years and years and years ago. And it's weird because you all kind of just, I mean, I don't know how they're going to run this one, but I'm sure ICP runs theirs differently than Radiohead.
I would assume, yeah.
So they
I
don't
assume it's
perform?
No.
No, you go in and you, like, this was like you sat in beanbags and you, like, stared at the ceiling and you
While you
all
listen.
listened to the album together.
And they watch you listen?
I assume they'll be kind of interacting. I don't know
I think they spray Faygo on you.
Probably that. Or maybe there's like a face painting station and, different things.
It seems like a really low effort for them. I mean, it's show up and
It's $10.
Yeah,
That's
right.
what
Yeah,
it's
it's
and
easy
you get
money.
the album. So, okay. So Friday, February 15th and February 16th, if you like country, Eric Church will be at LCA.
All right, cool. And if you need more Valentine's Day ideas, we've got some more coming up, so stick around.
This is the D.
Becky, Nick, from time to time we have somebody call in, one of our regulars, to talk about their area of expertise. And I got to tell you, I don't know if anybody knows more about music than this woman right here. She is the host of Essential Music. She's been the host of Essential Music on 101.9 WDET for a decade now.
Yeah, so cool.
She's celebrating 10 years. Happens every Saturday. They've now expanded Saturday to 3 hours, so it's 11 to 2 on Saturday and 11 to 1 on Sunday mornings. Please welcome Ann DeLisi. Ann, hi.
I am great. Hello. How are you? You didn't even ask me how I was, and I'm telling you how great I am.
We always like to know,
Things are
Ann.
good.
Yeah, good.
Well, it's great to have you on, especially now because the Grammys just happened, and we've got to get your take on it.
Perfect
So,
timing.
What did you make of it?
Well, as a Detroiter, the first thing I think about is the Motown tribute. And Jennifer Lopez got an awful lot of grief before she even sang a note or danced a step. Here's what I think. I think that it didn't feel like Motown to me. And so I know she worked really hard. And I know she put in clearly a lot of effort to make this happen, but it didn't feel like a Detroit tribute to me. And when you have Smokey Robinson and Diana Ross in the house and they're not part of it, it felt very strange to me.
Well, Smokey,
so I had kind of an issue with that.
Smokey got up and joined her, but even that felt weird. Like it felt mismatched. It felt wrong place, wrong time.
Really,
what's happening?
I remember Michael Jackson as a kid twerking in ABC. Like,
So you thought it was a perfect fit.
I thought it was perfect.
I mean, listen, the costumes were beautiful. The dancing was, great, but it was like, why? How? And we have so much Motown talent.
Yeah.
It's just bizarre.
I forget which block is Jenny from again?
She's not from Motown.
Not from the Motown block. Yeah. Well, here's the other thing too. I don't know how you do a tribute to Motown without including a Marvin Gaye song. That was one thing that really stood out to me. And the other one was it would have been nice to have an African American artist up there.
For sure. I mean, that was the whole point.
Bruno Mars could have gotten up there and done an incredible job last night. Andra Day, who did the Aretha tribute, she could have gotten up there and sang last night. I mean, the list kind of goes on and on of these artists who really could have pulled it off and did a beautiful job. And it's nothing against Jennifer Lopez, but it just didn't feel like Motown. And by the way, I had a big pet peeve about that tribute. If you're going to do a cover of Papa Was a Rolling Stone, that is not the way to do it. If you want to hear the perfect cover of Papa Was a Rolling Stone by a Detroit band, Was Not Was did a brilliant cover of it. That is the one to listen to, which I will play on Saturday and say exactly what I'm saying right now.
Oh, now she's waving her BMI and ASCAP rights in our face.
Yes. But
that's right.
I even thought it was so dominated by, even if she was a small part of it, but you could have had a huge ensemble of mixture of performers. It was just very odd.
Yeah, it was odd, and like I said, there are performers out there who really could have pulled it off. There are performers out there who could have sung a Marvin Gaye song and done justice to it. And so it felt to me like it was forced, and that not a lot of thought about what Motown stood for, what it was, and what it felt like was taken into consideration when that tribute was devised. So I'm glad that they did a tribute to Motown. Motown certainly deserves it. It's just not the way I would have done it.
I think they could have done it without Detroit artists, but I think they would have needed multiple people. Get a Lady Gaga in there, get somebody from the rock world in there,
maybe do that kind of mashup.
Yeah.
But the whole thing with Motown, I mean, prior to that, like black artists were not even pictured on album covers. They were not, you would sell music to radio stations, not telling them that they were black artists. And it was just, so that the music would speak for itself. And so for Motown, they had the very first African-American salesperson for any record label ever, things like that. I mean, it's important.
Yeah.
So
the history is so significant, and it's so important, and it matters today. And a lot of that was really lost in that performance and in that tribute last night. And it was a little bit heartbreaking. Being from Detroit, all of us, who are from Detroit have, we have a lot of passion about it. We have, there's just a love of that. That brand, if you think about Motown is an international brand, how many international brands with that kind of history are there when it comes to anything aside from music even? It's a miracle. It's miraculous that even today in the UK, they can't get enough of it.
Wow.
Right.
Well, it wasn't the only tribute on the Grammys. Let's talk about the other one and see if that fared better. I'm talking about the Aretha Franklin tribute. What'd you make of that?
Better. It was better.
That was lukewarm.
It was much better. All of those women could sing, and I thought hold their own with Aretha Franklin's music. But I would have wanted to see them on the stage doing her music.
Yes, it was like weirdly quiet, right?
Mm-hmm. It was just kind of off to the side, not the front and center that it should have been. Aretha Franklin was the most prominent artist that we lost in the world of music last year. And so she deserved, I thought,
Spectacle.
something on the big stage with. Here's what I would have done if I was a producer, and boy, am I an armchair producer. Let me tell you, I would have had an entire video montage of Aretha's career.
Oh, that's a good idea.
It would have showed all of the hits of everything that she had done that was, all the hits that everybody loves. And I would have done a video piece dedicated to her. And then maybe those three women would have come out, and that would have been in front of an orchestra even, and done it that way. So it was not a tribute fitting for the Queen of Soul.
Yeah, a gospel choir could have been up there. Mm-hmm. So many things.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think there was some thought about there is going to be a televised Aretha Franklin tribute, later in the year? Do you think that was taken into consideration, or?
That's a good thing to consider. However, it's the Grammys production. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like they
I
owned
agree.
what happened last night, and they should take ownership of what it looked and sounded like. I thought the Dolly Parton tribute was way better.
Yeah, totally. Mm-hmm. And she's still alive.
Yeah, well, that helps. Yeah. Of course.
That may be why.
That could have, No, but I mean, yeah, there's some, I don't know, the disconnect there. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about, we did have some winners from the Michigan area.
Yeah.
I mean, at least we can be glad for that, right?
Well, look at Greta Van Fleet. That was a big night for those guys.
Yeah.
It was a big night. Yeah.
So the album, it was Best Rock Album of the Year, which is fantastic. They were up for a couple others that they didn't nab, but
there were three others, but that's okay. They got the big one.
They got a good
night,
price.
for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
They were also just on SNL too.
yeah, it was, they're blowing up.
They are.
Yeah, it's good. Any other Michigan winners that we should be aware of?
Mac Avenue Records. They put out a lot of jazz albums, and they grabbed a Grammy last night, so congratulations to them. So the Motor City was represented, or Michigan, I should say, was represented last night.
Nice. Well, let's talk about the big anniversary for you. I mean, 10 years. Congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you so much. It's really hard to believe that it's been 10 years. I remember the first day like it was yesterday, and the show is far different than it was when I started.
Yeah, what was it like when you started? What's different now?
Well, when I started, I didn't know what I was doing. So I had done radio before, but I really hadn't formulated what the show has grown into now. And it really has been truly, not to sound cliche about it, but a true evolution of me, of the show, of what I gleaned that people wanted. And now, I have found myself, and what I realized in the last 10 years was, opposed to when I was at WDET the first time, which was 1983 to 1995, we're at a very different point in music history now. And so it has been a big part of the show to look back on the people that are the foundation of rock and roll and pop music, which for all intents and purposes started in the late 50s. Well, the people that laid the foundation for the music that we listen to as rock and pop, and now we have hip hop has grown out of all of that as well. All of that started with, these really incredible artists, and now they have put in an entire life of making music, and they have an entire life of music to look back on, especially when they pass away. And I ended up doing way more tributes to artists that passed away, and I hadn't intended on it. But when you had people like Prince and David Bowie and Glenn Frey, and the list goes on, and Merle Haggard, and all of these artists passing away, it felt like rapid fire there for a couple of years. I felt like it was important to remember what their contribution was to music.
Those are some
And
of
so
my
that has
favorite
been
shows of yours, definitely.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And they kill me. They absolutely
Well,
kill
it's
me to do 'em.
heartbreaking, yeah. And it's almost
Yeah.
some of that flavor of you don't know what you have till it's gone kind of thing. But yeah, really well done.
I mean, it's heartbreaking to do it, and it's really hard to do it, like from a logistical standpoint, and the amount of research that goes in, because I research everything and I edit everything myself. So I get very insular for a couple days when I'm working on a tribute like that, and all I do is listen to their words and their music. And I will say that of all the ones I've done, Prince was the most difficult.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I cried during
Yeah,
it. And I
he's
wasn't
my
even
favorite.
creating
Yeah.
it. Oh, for sure.
So, You know, I want to point something else out as well, which is that, you know, I work in the radio industry. I've come from radio like you.
Right.
10 years is a long time. All right. My max at a radio station is a year and a half. Okay. Right. Over and over and over. I hit 18 months and then, you know, I was basically shown the door. So I do want to point out that this is a rare feat and really is commendable. So
You guys are so nice.
What are you doing to celebrate?
Well, a lot of, and thank you for those kind words, Seth, for sure. It is not lost on me, by the way, that 10 years is a long time to be doing this. What I decided to do, because a lot of the shows that I did involved the listeners, like there were many of those shows that were curated by me and the listeners. They were an integral part of how those shows came to be. Everything from the Guilty Pleasure show to, I mean, the list goes on and on. People would make all kinds of suggestions. And so what I'm asking people to do is to simply go to wdet.org/mysong and tell me what their favorite show was that I did, or a song that they discovered because they listened to the show. And I'm going to put as many of those comments and those songs into those 2 days. So it's the last weekend of February. And it is going to be more about the listener. Certainly, it's always been about them more than it is about me. You know, I told somebody recently, they were a listener, and I said, you know, I think about you guys every day. Like, I think about the listeners every single day. And so it drives everything that I do. And if, you know, we all have to remember, if nobody's listening, does it really matter that we're doing this? No, it doesn't. And so we do it for them, you know, and we can't see them, and we hope that they're there, and you hope that they're enjoying what they hear. But I am always mindful that they are the goal. Is they have a million things to listen to. Honestly, the choices are endless now. It certainly is different than when I was doing this back in the 80s. Now they have endless choices, and the fact that they will listen, and then we have to ask people to give money on top of it. It's not just please listen. It's and can you write a check for that? You know, it's a whole different thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think this is where somebody like you becomes so important to that radio experience, is because you can talk about the additional context. I mean, I remember a Martin Luther King special that you did, you know, and where you were bringing up music and talking about in the context, and I learned a lot, you know, listening to you. And so I think that's really important. You're asking everybody else what their favorite show is. I got to ask you, what's your favorite show that you've done?
Oh, God. I'm never interviewed. This is very weird. Okay.
Other side of the desk.
You guys are so turned to the tables. Nobody does this to me. Okay. I think the most fun shows were the Guilty Pleasure shows, because people made me play like Poison and Whitesnake and stuff like that I would never, ever played in my life. Those were the most fun. One of the most interesting shows I did was the Backup Singers show. So the show was focused on the backing vocals, not, you know what I'm saying? Like how the backing vocals were so prominent. And it was such a great show to do, because for an entire week, everything that I listened to through a different filter. It was all about the backing vocals. And I heard these songs in a completely different way. It was really great, a great exercise for me. And so, but all the tributes, I feel really gratified when I do those. They're an incredible amount of work, but they're so gratifying when they're done. And I feel, and here's the other thing, you know, you guys, when somebody passes away, you have one chance to get it right, one opportunity to get it done the right way. And so I'm very mindful of that. And they're long nights, and I stay up late, and I work until I can't work, and I edit until I walk out the door to go do the show. And so those, I think, are the most gratifying. The most fun were the Guilty Pleasures. And then, you know, we've done everything. When I look back on some of the crazy themes that I've tried, it's really kind of crazy that they just kind of let me do some of the things that I do. But the audience is there, you know, they're into it, you know, they're ready to go on these little journeys with me. And I couldn't be more grateful. Honestly, every time that I go on the air, I am grateful to be there.
Well, awesome. Well, congratulations again. One more time, what's that link if people want to share their memories?
It's wdet.org/mysong, and they can put a song and an artist, tell me why they loved it, why they heard it, you know, when they heard it on the show, or a favorite show that they had that we did.
Awesome. Well, Ann, thank you so much for checking in. We always love hearing from you.
Guys.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye.
The D. Brief.
Becky, let's talk about some other things that are happening around town, especially Valentine's Day
I
coming
know,
up.
It's Thursday, guys. Do you guys have plans? What are you big?
I do have plans.
What are you going to do?
We're going to go be cultured. We're going to go to
Okay.
Cranbrook for the Cranbrook Couples exhibit.
Sexy.
Yeah.
What goes on there?
So it's like all the couples in art and design and kind of going through them. Yeah.
Oh, I like that idea. Is that at the art museum? Or?
It is, yes.
Okay.
My wife set that up, and then hopefully we have dinner plans, which is on my shoulders. So
Well, you can always go with a little picnic.
picnic would be great.
You know?
Yes.
Yeah.
I know. What are you waiting for the last minute? You can't decide American or Lafayette?
Just give her some of these. Give her some of these cocktails. You won't even miss the food.
She's over it now. Like
Yeah,
she's
it's
already
like,
she's married.
oh, yeah,
she's not
Nick.
fooling for the cocktails.
Nick does cocktails. What else? Yeah.
So,
What about
yeah.
you, Seth?
We had plans. We canceled them.
We?
Well, we
Oh,
right.
It was a mutual canceling.
Well, because she kept saying, we got to make plans, we got to make plans, we got to make plans. You know, she's saying this like, I don't know, months out. And I'm like, we'll make plans, we'll figure it out. And so, like, a week ago, I called, I've always wanted to go to Cliff Bell's. I have not been yet. It's one of those
Oh,
places
it's
that I
great.
know I need to go to. So I call up,
Yeah.
call Cliff Bell's, and they're like, look, we've got slots
Seatings.
open from 5 to 7 or from 9 to, whatever. And so I said, okay, 9, and we'll do dinner at Cliff Bell's.
It's Thursday, Seth. That's late.
You sound
I
like
disagree.
her.
Well, why didn't you ask me first? Do you have like
No,
a
'cause-
work wife you can ask these things to?
I've already had this fight and lost. I don't need to have it again.
What's interesting though is 5 to 7. I feel like is drinks. Like that's a hair
Right.
early
I
for
agree. That's
food.
why I went with 9.
It is a little.
Yeah.
Well, I could eat at 7 on a weekday.
Yeah. So
But that's the end though.
That you're right.
So-
You're right.
Right.
Yeah.
And
5 is early.
And then
Yeah.
the chimney cracked and water came in, and that's $2,000 out of my pocket. And then it became, okay, we're
just gonna spend on this.
it's gonna be a nice bottle of wine.
We've
Yeah.
also been there. So on Christmas Day, we set a fire in our fireplace. First time we ever had the house, and we get smoke coming back in.
Oh, the flu.
Yep.
Yeah.
And well, no, it wasn't the flu. It was something with the cracking.
Oh.
And so all of a sudden we're like lighting our house on fire Christmas Day. That was an exciting Christmas.
That's not fun.
No.
No, that's not a good idea. Well, we bought a Tony Rocco painting, so we will be staying in for Valentine's Day.
I know. Fancy
Pardon
person over
me,
here.
right?
Oh,
And it's
jeez.
called Love, and it's gorgeous. So
If you just buy a beer, you get one of those for free.
that's different because that's
12
not
of
an
them. You
original.
get 12 of them in a pack.
No, I don't
That's
know.
not original, and you can't see the brush
Come to
strokes.
me. I'll tell you where all the deals are.
Oh, we're such different people. Okay, so if you need something last minute that doesn't require a major reservation and you can't screw it up, here's 3 ideas for you, okay? So they have Village of Love, a Planned Parenthood benefit. Now, what is sexier than safe sex, I think? You can show up at Deluxe Flux and raise money for Planned Parenthood. It's the first annual shindig of this sort. There's going to be a lineup. I think there's 9 or 10 singers, musicians, DJs. It's a pretty cool lineup. Raffle prizes, all that kind of thing.
Space is amazing too.
It's
Black
beautiful.
light, video
Yeah.
games, kegged cocktails.
It's very stimulating.
Yes.
Or if you're totally just not into Valentine's Day, you can go to the annual anti-Valentine's Day party at Whiskey in the Jar in Hamtramck. It's one of those cool like dive bars in Hamtramck. Booze specials. There's going to be PBR swag up for grabs and piñata bashing.
So you're like making fun of piñatas? Is that what this is?
Yeah, I know.
I think it's just, if you have some aggression about Valentine's Day, you can go do it in a safe environment. And this one kind of is in between those two, okay? It's called Heartbreaks and Mixtapes, a Valentine's Day party. It's at the Standby, so also in the Belt. You could even combine it with the Deluxe Flux situation. So this starts on Valentine's Day, actually goes through the whole weekend through the 17th. They're basically channeling the 90s as that perfect music time from Boyz II Men to Whitney Houston, your love songs, your breakup songs, and they're going to have specialty food and I guess great cocktails that pair with it.
Some of the best.
So-
Yeah.
So the music will be mentally hip hop, smoothed out on the R&B tip with a pop feel appeal to it. That's what you're
I
saying.
think that was actually in their press package, yes. But they're actually going to pair the drinks with the songs,
That's great.
which I think is super cool. So, what
Nice.
what do you think? Like I'll Always Love You.
Don't look at me. He's the expert.
Yeah. What do you think? Like I'll Always Love You by Whitney Houston. Like what kind of drink would you have with
Some
that?
Amaros, some like Italian love liqueurs, something like that. Yeah.
Oh, I like this game. Can we
I
just
know.
name 90s
Yeah,
songs?
do one.
And Smells Like Teen Spirit.
Oh God, that's like Mike's Hard Lemonade.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Hey, go ahead.
I'm trying to think.
Anything off
What-
Dookie.
Oh yeah, yes, definitely.
Like a Hummer.
For sure. What about Stop Playing Games with My Heart?
Champagne.
Yes.
Yeah, well, maybe that's a little, maybe more like whiskey. Because if it's more like a mean, like, stop teasing me.
Oh, that's true. Need something harder.
I could play this game all night.
I know. Any more? You want to end on it? Okay, so films. We've talked about talked about the Grammys, extensively, but what about the Oscars are coming up? And some of the things that you rarely see are those short films. So a lot of times you're watching the Oscars, you hear about all these short documentaries and stuff. I don't know what any of those are. You can go to the Detroit Film Theater at the DIA and see everything that's up for awards.
Nice.
And it's very popular. So you want to get tickets in advance. Last year, this drew 14,500 people.
Wow.
Yeah, and they have multiple screenings. Last year, there was 19. I think it's somewhere around that this year. It's over a few weekends. It started last weekend. It goes through February 28th. So all the 2019 Oscar-nominated short films, there's animated, there's live action, there's documentary, and a lot of times these really pack a punch. It's pretty gripping stories, and you can see all those at the DFT.
Think if you're going to a party, how educated you'd be if you're I saw that, it was lovely.
Exactly. That animated short, hands down, will win. Yeah.
All right. Coming up in just a few minutes, we'll do shout-outs.
Welcome to the
With Detroit's
arts and entertainment scene.
All right, guys, there was a story that caught my attention, and this is a serious one. So I don't appreciate the fact that I'm finishing my cocktail as we talk about this.
We have scotch.
Well,
You might need the next batch.
we live in a media environment where if you say something dumb, it's going to go viral. So let's hope that I'm okay here, because there's a bit of controversy. Right? I mean, as we're recording this, the big controversy is the controversy that's happening in Virginia over blackface and all that. We have a similar controversy that is happening, similar
here.
in some ways, that's happening right here in our own backyard in Dearborn. It is a controversy over anti-Semitism, specifically Henry Ford's anti-Semitic views. So Bill McGraw is a veteran journalist here in the city of Detroit, and he was working part-time as the editor of the Dearborn Historian magazine. Right, and he'd just taken the job. The January issue would have been the second issue that he had overseen. By the way, small publication. Okay, less than 200 people get this magazine.
Micro.
Right. Yes. I mean, tiny.
Very niche.
Right. When our podcast has a bigger audience than your magazine. Okay.
But is it also online that anyone can see?
Probably.
Okay.
But he was putting out an issue that was a special report. It was called Henry Ford and the International Jew. And it was all about how Henry Ford bought a paper called The Independent. It was actually the 100th anniversary of him buying The Independent. And then he used it as a platform to attack the Jews. Henry Ford did a lot of good things, but not everything he did was good.
And I will say not everyone knows this.
Right.
But it's not secret at the same time.
It's also not secret.
Yeah.
Not everyone knows it, but a lot of people know
But there was a lot of detail in this. I mean, they went into a lot of it. And the cover, which had a black and white photo of Ford, along with a quote that was a particularly nasty quote, something that Henry Ford had said, was on there. Anyway, this magazine is funded by the city of Dearborn. And the mayor of Dearborn, Jack O'Reilly, basically squashed it and had Bill McGraw relieved of his job. I mean, he's saying, well, I didn't fire him, but, he doesn't have his job anymore. Right, yes.
Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And what Jack O'Reilly said, what the mayor said was, quote, it was thought that by presenting information from 100 years ago that included hateful messages without a compelling reason directly linked to events in Dearborn today, this edition of the city-funded Historian could become a distraction from our continuing messages of inclusion and respect.
It's tough because I think there was a survey that came out recently saying that 2/3 of the U.S. doesn't know about the Holocaust and remember the Holocaust. And so, I think there is some point to what Bill was trying to do here. But at the same time, it does seem like he was trying to fan the fire a little bit.
Yeah, I guess it depends on what the intent was or the framework. Was it just directly a factual reporting piece? Or?
Well, you can see it because the website, Deadline Detroit, published it anyway. And McGraw's actually a co-founder of that website. Mm-hmm. And then the Detroit, the Dearborn Historical Museum the Dearborn See, this is your cocktail. The Dearborn Historical Museum Commission called on O'Reilly to release the most current issue of the Dearborn Historian to its readers in an emergency meeting. A Historical Museum Commission.
This was historic.
Had an emergency meeting, which I don't think happens very often, where there's like a history emergency. And so in a letter to the Dearborn Historian subscribers, O'Reilly said that he would use his own resources to print and mail 4 articles about Ford in an 8-page booklet in place of the unpublished issue. All right. So, and I had sort of read about this. I'd heard about it, but I actually sat down with Tim Kiska, who's a friend of the podcast. We had lunch last week. He produces the Detroit History podcast. He's also a professor of journalism over at the U of M, and he's worked in the media here for years and years and years. Detroit Free Press, Detroit News, WWJ AM, and so he's well connected.
Right.
I mean, he knows McGraw and all that. His season 2 of the Detroit History podcast is coming out, and the first episode deals with the anti-Semitism of Henry Ford.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what is his reasoning to do that?
I think the same. I think it's history. Like, this is something that actually happened. And look, there's anti-Semitism resurfacing today in a way that, and again, maybe I live in a bubble, but frankly, I've been surprised.
That's what I was going to say. My take on this is that history is important to understand and not to sweep under the rug, and to bring light to it. And especially, I think, today's world we live in, so much of this has become kind of like exposed and like, quote unquote, okay again to be hateful to groups. And so we need to learn from that and grow.
And some people are doing it stupidly or on accident or because they don't know.
That's true too.
I mean, I'm shocked to learn that there are people in this country who don't know why blackface is a problem.
Right,
but there are.
But if there are, we need to talk about why it is.
The SNL sketch was a perfect example of that.
Right.
Exactly.
Right, and that's why I think stuff like this is important. Is yes, it's dredging up some ugly history, but I think it's important because there are new generations coming along, and if you sweep all this stuff under the rug, they don't understand the context, and they don't know. We're coming. We're going to live in a world soon where there weren't people who were alive during World War II, who weren't alive during the Holocaust, and.
And we can be sad that ignorance exists, but we can't just cover our eyes if we know it does. So I think it's partly in the way it's handled. Like, I think that's a really good question. Like, why was it brought up? Does it have a certain context to it?
Right.
So I think that's important as well.
So I am a big fan of the Detroit History podcast. I think Tim Kiska and his team do an amazing job with it.
So knowledgeable.
He told me that they had to go out and re-add stuff to this. And you've heard his podcast. I mean, they're not like ours. They're much more complicated.
Very complicated.
We whip these together in a single night. I mean, he spends months on every episode.
A lot of research and facts. And
he wanted to work some of this into that episode in light of the things that were happening.
See, I love that. That sounds like a really sensitive handling of it and thoughtful. Yeah.
So anyway, go check out the podcast. Season 2 is dropping. There's going to be a lot more. Season 1's amazing. Go back and listen to it, especially if you're in Detroit history.
History never gets old, right?
Oh,
wait, that does.
Yeah. Go check it out. It's DetroitHistoryPodcast.com.
This is the D.
Detroit.
This is the D. Breathe.
All right. There's our show.
Good one. We covered a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, Nick.
That was
a lot of fun
to have you on.
Thank you.
Thanks for the cocktails.
You will have to come back tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, please do.
I'll bottle a whole case and drop them off.
Oh,
Super.
look at that. You're invited back anytime.
Yes.
Look, a couple of things that we want to mention before we get out of here. We have a mobile app. You can download it whether you've got an iPhone or an Android phone. And it's not only the easiest way to listen to this podcast, but we put a lot of bonus episodes in there as well, bonus content. For example, I just did an interview with Mark Ridley of Mark Ridley's Comedy Castle. He's celebrating 40 years, which is forever in that business.
Oh, yeah.
It's an amazing run, and we talked about it. You can hear him talk about all sorts of things, but only if you get the mobile app.
And it's free.
Yeah.
Like, you have nothing to lose. You can also listen on your Amazon Echo. All you do is say, Alexa, enable the Debrief podcast.
We have a legend on Friday's episode, Carmen Harland, 38 years over there at WDIV, and now she's launched her own clothing line. She's going to stop by and tell us all about
An
it.
incredibly lovely woman. We had so much fun talking with her.
All right, before we get out of here, let's do some shout-outs, shall we?
Sure.
Becky, who do you want to give a shout-out to?
So, friend of the show and one of our previous guest co-hosts, Sax Appeal. He did a headlining show at Aretha's Jazz Cafe. He did a couple of them over the weekend.
Nice.
So we went to that, and it was super fun. And then we also had the opportunity this weekend to go out to the River Bistro. They're in Rosedale Park neighborhood. That's Chef Max Hardy's place. Yeah, I remember when we had him on the show.
Yeah,
and
very cool.
So many interesting things. So, and he shared with us when we had dinner of jerk ribs and Brussels sprouts and cilantro rice and mac and cheese. We had a table for kings. I mean, it was crazy amount of food. We took a bunch home. He treated us very, very well. We got to sample some of the things that he's doing for the special Black History Month dinners on Saturday nights. So good. But he was telling us he was just with Oprah and Snoop Dogg, like over the Super Bowl weekend.
Just drop that name on the floor.
Yeah. So it was great. Go to River Bistro.
What about you, Nick? Any names you want to drop? Anybody you want to give a shout-out to?
So friend Tracy Evans, he hasn't announced this anywhere, so this is going to be exclusive to you guys. Yeah. Breaking news. He is opening a cocktail supply store in Detroit called The Bitter Detroit.
Ooh.
So this is not something Detroit has right now. There's really not a spot you can go to
No.
get bitters and cocktail supplies and tools and things like that. So he's going to work on this. It's coming out in a couple months. So check out The Bitter Detroit.
Awesome.
Nice. Do you know where it's going to be? Or
He has a
not?
couple locations he's looking at.
Okay.
If has picked one, he hasn't told me yet.
Oh, okay.
This is why you always listen till the end of the episode. You get these exclusives.
Exactly.
I want to give a shout out. I had a great free Sunday.
Oh,
With,
nice.
With the girlfriend and the family down in Detroit. First of all, we went to J Dilla Youth Day. It was happening over at the Charles Wright, which was pretty amazing to watch people just breakdancing and playing with all the equipment. And by the way, I've listened to Donuts like 3 times last week in preparation for
good.
J Dilla
Well, that
Youth
was
Day.
one of your Become a Detroiter assignments.
Yes,
so good.
absolutely. And then we headed over to Winter Blast, which was fantastic, and they had the big slides and everything. We went ice skating and rented the whole, the
Did you
skates,
do
the whole
that
thing.
polar plunge?
No.
Okay.
I did not. I saw them, but
So
no, we
cold
didn't.
over
Yes.
the weekend, too.
So that was cool. Hey, I want to say thank you to Ann DeLisi for calling in and tell us about the show. And thank you to you, Nick. Look, the website is nickdrinks.com. People should go check it out. What's coming up on the website that we should be aware of?
You know what? YouTube is where a lot of action's happening right now. We're working on a big Game of Thrones series of videos that's going to drop starting in a couple weeks and finalize right before the premiere. So check that out. That's going to be big.
Oh, so what do you mean Game of Thrones?
So we have all 9 of the whiskeys that they released, and we had to pull a lot of strings to get them because they were very limited. So we're going to taste each one, and we're going to pair them with a little skit that we had written by a comedy writer.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Very cool. Anybody we know?
Yeah, he's a PJ over at Go Comedy.
Oh,
and,
Oh, sure. We've
He's been
interviewed
on the show.
him.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
he's a famous guy. He's been on those Hungry Howie's commercials and a number of other
Yes.
things. So the guy's a legend.
Oh, very cool. Well, look, come back tomorrow. We'd love to have you back on. Until then, Detroit's moving.
Keep up.
The D Brief.
Your guide to Detroit's arts and entertainment scene.